This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.
Here's another one that kind of has every element to it. Family betrayal, cold, hard cash, and a murder mystery that's sat unsolved for nearly 30 years. Imagine thinking you've gotten away with the perfect crime only to have a single shoe rat you out decades later. Back in August of 1997 in the tiny town of Sasakwa, Oklahoma, population 200, 81-year-old widow Gerthie Carolina was found brutally beaten and stabbed to death in her own home. It was a crime that shook this small community all those years ago. It was a crime that the small community was in utter disarray over, because really, who kills an elderly woman in a rural town? Despite investigators' best efforts, the case went cold. Fast forward nearly 30 years. And now, thanks to some forensic magic, police have arrested two of Carolina's own relatives for the crime. And their alleged motive? A $40,000 inheritance. Now, $40,000 isn't nothing, but it's also not exactly a life-changing fortune, even in 1997, especially if you're planning to split it. Yet here they are, 28 years later, two people facing the murder charge over money that was probably spent within a few months. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about suspects here. The two people now charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder are Carolyn Foreman, 81, Carolyn's own niece, who, by the way, was previously charged in another murder back in 1999. More on that later. And Dakota Davis, 45, who was just 17 at the time of the killing, and is Foreman's grandniece, so also related to Carolina. And I want to say this to the audience because I know I've had some comments on this. I apologize for my sniffing. My allergies are horrible right now. And reading a story, sometimes it's hard not to get away from the mic and sniff, but I'm trying to mute the mic as much as I can. So bear with me through this season the best we can. I'm not trying to sniff into your ears while you wear earbuds. I'm really not. I apologize. Okay. Back in 1997, these two were the ones who found the body and even called the police, claiming they had arrived at 3:15 a.m. to take Carolina to a doctor's appointment, because apparently that's a total normal time to head to the doctor at 3:15 a.m.
Even if you have to travel, that is a weird time to leave for the doctor.
I mean, if you have surgery at like 6 a.m. maybe, and you got to get ready, but I don't think that's what this was. For nearly 3 decades, the case went nowhere until forensic testing recently linked Carolina's blood to a shoe. This is literally a case of the other shoe dropping, belonging to Davis from back in the day. And just like that, the long, cold trail was suddenly hot again. Again, that motive, $40,000 and some family drama. So why would two family members allegedly beat and stab an elderly woman to death? That's where you get the money. Investigators say that just 4 months before her death, Carolina set up a $40,000 certificate of deposit in a living trust for Foreman. So when Carolina ended up dead, Foreman and Davis wasted no time cashing out the trust just days after the murder. The problem, investigators now believe that they didn't wait for the money to come naturally. They killed her for it. If that wasn't enough of a red flag, apparently Davis has been telling people for years that she killed her great aunt, because that's smart, sometimes mentioning an axe or a machete, because nothing screams, I got away with it, like casually bragging about murder. Even Davis's own father eventually told police that his daughter confessed to him back in 2001, saying she chopped up Carolina while Foreman stood by yelling, hit her again, hit her again. Your kid comes to you and says this, you're like, okay, honey, hey, let's go to Sonic.
You don't report that, yeah.
I heard it's 99-cent corn dogs today.
I'll buy.
It is Oklahoma. Now, if you're trying to maintain innocence, maybe don't go around describing the murder scene like it's a replay of a horror movie. I know, just a thought. The other family drama wasn't even the only bad blood in the family. Before Carolina's death, she had already accused Foreman of stealing money from her bank account, so things were already tense even before someone decided to go full slasher movie with an elderly woman. Okay, I got to say this, and I'm not blaming the victim, but here's the thought. If the people who have been trying to steal money from you and you're catching it, are in your life still, don't tell them that they're going to get money when you die. Or how about just don't give them money when you die?
Yeah.
Give it to like the animal shelter or something.
And I wonder too if they knew that their name was on this account and then she confronts them about stealing from her. This is just a theory, but it's pretty good. But they were afraid she was going to take their names off of it. So if they killed her then they got the money.
Or was it a conversation?
If they waited for her to die, she might have given that money to somebody else.
That's a thought. Like, oh, what if she's really mad? Yeah, that could be a thought. I see that. In case you thought it was Foreman's first brush with the law, no. Turns out, back in 1999, Foreman was charged with first-degree murder in the shooting death of a 16-year-old.
My God.
She was partying like it's 1999, and I don't believe there was ever murder of a 16-year-old in the Prince song. That charge was eventually dismissed, but the fact that you're even up on that charge to begin with, I mean, like, what are the odds? And get this, her own son was later convicted for the murder and is now serving a life sentence. So,
horrible.
To recap, Foreman's son is already in prison for murder. Foreman was once charged with murder. Now Foreman herself is facing murder charges. I mean, at some point we might need to start asking questions about the family tree.
Yeah, she enrolled her niece in this activity. And her niece is suspected. You know, her niece is going around bragging about it.
Look, I'm just going to be really brutally honest here. And if you live in a small town in Oklahoma and life is great and grand and it's not like this, more power to you. I've been to several small towns in Oklahoma, and several are very nice and lovely. I will say that. And there's some that look like it's the hills have eyes. Mm-hmm. And the people in those towns very much resemble the hills have eyes. Because, you know, everybody's having sex with their siblings. And then you end up with this kind of mutant-like culture. And nobody knows right from wrong, and they're incapable of it. I don't know if that's the case here. But I'm just kind of thinking, with the amount of horrible decisions that are being made here, these might be kind of mutant-ish people.
And Gerthie having that kind of money, $40,000. And that's
the odd part.
Certificate of deposit. That probably was like $1 million to these people.
It really could be. Again, I am.
So that was a significant. Yeah. But you know that money's long gone. Like you said, they spent that right away.
And look, in no way am I disparaging anybody who is lower income or lives in a small town in Oklahoma. I'm not. Everybody knows what I'm talking about here. There are certain areas, certain towns you drive through in rural parts of the country, whether it's Oklahoma, whether it's New York, whether it's Maine, whether it's California, wherever the hell you want to go. There are towns like this where it's, you know, essentially the rest of society has left and they have stayed. And they're not very capable of dealing with themselves. And this is how, you know, they interact with one another until something horrible happens. So I don't know. I'm thinking there's some of that going on here.
Every time I hear a story like this, and I know that science is what's brought them to justice, I love it. It's like they got away with it for almost 30 years.
But are you...
Carolyn Foreman, I think she has dementia. She's now same age that Gerthie was back then.
But are you stopping anything? I mean, great, you got the people or the whatever. You're not fixing the problem, because I can guarantee there's a lot of these issues are still going on in this community, and there's a lot of bad choices being made and unhealthy lives being lived. And I don't know. You got to fix the problem.
At least there's justice for Gerthie.
At least
anyone named Gerthie, like, it just breaks my heart. This poor elderly woman was murdered by her own family, and for almost 30 years there was no justice for this woman. Now, Carolyn, who's now the same age, 81 years old with dementia, I don't know what you do with her. You can't really put her into a prison. She needs to go into a dementia unit somewhere, I'm sure. But Dakota, she can go sit in prison. She did.
It's interesting with generations, what names people find beautiful or pretty. In what decade did anyone ever look at Gerthie and go, that sounds like a beautiful name for a girl?
Yes, she's going to grow up to be slim and attractive.
Ever? Like anytime? I mean, turn of the century, no matter, I don't think there's ever a time where that was ever going to be a good idea. Ever. Ever.
You set the poor woman up for failure with a name like that.
Despite their best efforts to avoid justice for 28 years, both women are behind bars. Davis was arrested in Sacramento, California, because nothing says, I'm totally innocent, like moving across the country. Foreman, who's now 81, was taken into custody in Midwest City, Oklahoma. And by the way, she apparently has dementia. So we'll see how that plays out in her defense. What happens next? Now that authorities have finally got the charges against them, it's going to be a court battle. Both women are charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Seminole County District Attorney Eric Johnson made it clear that investigators never gave up, saying this case is a testament to the relentless dedication of these investigators and our unwavering pursuit of justice, even decades after the crime was committed. The biggest piece of evidence, the bloodstained shoe that tied Davis back to the crime scene all these years later. I guess I'd like to know more about, and I'm sure it exists, the answer to this, of how did they come across the shoe? Like what brought them back to the shoe all these years later to take a look at it?
You have to wonder with these cold cases, so often the evidence sits there. There's so many cold cases and they don't get around to looking back into it. And they might have got a new investigator. And he's like, let me look through some of these cold cases and see what we got. And they're like, damn, we got a shoe. Has anybody looked into that?
I think
it could have been something like that.
The scariest thing for all the people who've gotten away with crimes, and there's a lot of people who have with all the cold cases that exist, is got to be modern times. And the amount of people who are willing to invest their own time, who are not police officers, to look into these things and solve these things independently, because you can request evidence, you can request information to try and go after things. And then the DNA and the AI technology also to look at records and patterns of behavior instantly that we did not have in the past. And there's so many of these people that will end up behind bars that probably thought, whew, I am clear.
Yeah, exactly.
It's coming for you. If you did something horrible, you will probably be found. You think it's amazing now what we have. It's going to be looked back upon as like fingerprints 20, 30 years from now. As we look at it now, like fingerprint, that's what there's like all you had. DNA, the digital footprint, all that will be looked at as, those are pretty damn good right now. They're going to have they could probably go all the way down to like psychological profiles at some point of here's what you were thinking at that point in time based on the data that we have. It's going to be spooky.
Scary.
It's scary, but hey, if it can weed out more shitty people from our society.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.